My Cheating Wife, hosted by Reddit user NoGain2432. So, my wife, call her M, cheated on me with a friend of mine. Call him J for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. We met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride and I the groom, and they sat us at that table so we would get together. When I first seen her, I was completely taken back by how beautiful she was, and when she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common. We clicked instantly. We talked for a while, ate the dinner and took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night. We ended up kissing in the middle of the dance floor, and when we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came up to us and asked what was up between us. They were really excited to play matchmaker. We just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left not exchanging numbers, but about a week later I got a text from her asking me out. Bride gave her my number. I of course said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great other than small arguments. We never really fought, and it was never anything really serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into us dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded of her phone. Girls' nights became more frequent and our sex life was almost non-existent. I had brought this up on multiple occasions but was brushed off, and that I'm letting my insecurities get to me. She would continue go on as if what I felt and tried to communicate didn't matter to her. So I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss as I leave for work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails and messenger apps and found nothing. Then from reading stories on here, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys and looked in her car and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I called her out. I didn't want her to say something like it had only happened once or anything stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number. I read though every message. I connected the phone to my computer and printed out every message and every photo and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked and emailed him, but as it was a Saturday, he wasn't in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretend I'm Spectrum, because who doesn't have Spectrum, but Jay's contact popped up. It took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me, but when I see her, I told her to get the fuck out. She closed the door and went to our room. I had never cursed at my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All of day I never left my office. I was just silently raging, just glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends, groom from the wedding, and tell him I need to go for a drink and asks if he'll come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and I really need to drink. So, without a word, I took all the printouts and left to go to the bar. I arrived first, ordered 4 shots of Jack and the beer. I was on my last shot when my friend, call him T, arrived and asked what's going on. I told him straight out M's cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know with who and told him it was Jay. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jay, and all he could say was I'm sorry over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We wouldn't ask one another to hang out, but if we see each other at a get-together, we were friendly. I told T don't mention this to anyone as I had just found out and I haven't even spoken to M or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me, to say I'm having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night, then I called an Uber and went home around 3 a.m. It was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T, and there was missed calls, a bunch of texts all from M asking me where I was, when I'd be home and if I was okay. I got home and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went to sleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to go pick up my car and go to my office and buried myself in work for the day, and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I told her no, and went to bed. She followed soon after asking what's been wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me. Eventually I snapped and yelled, "Stop, I am trying to sleep, go away." The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, and I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave and M had made breakfast asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I've been acting different and going on and on about how I changed. and she wants to know why I told her work has been stressful and soon it would be all over. I finished up and told her I've got to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes to go meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I'm going out to lunch with a client. My wife would call my work sometimes and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well and I handed over all I had gathered on her, and the lawyer had told me, "Well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money." I told him I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies as I haven't told my wife I knew yet and I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she will be served with papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I then thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife when I arrived. She wasn't home, so I called her. No answer. Called again, no answer. I texted her, "I don't give a fuck if you're riding Jay right now. Get home, we need to talk." Lo and behold, she calls me not a minute later asking what I was talking about. All I told her was get home now. She arrives about 15 minutes later and I said to her, "Wow, look at that. 15 minutes, that's about the same distance between here and Jay's, isn't it?" She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me and I said, "Well, nothing to say." She tried to deny and gaslight me and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence at first and showed it from the side and said, "Look at this mountain of things I gathered on you." Then I showed her each printout at a time. She then tells me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and tells me she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to that energy you had before? You were so adamant on degrading and insulting me just a minute ago." She tried to hug me and tell me how sorry she is. I put my hand out and told her don't touch me. She says, "Well, go to the bedroom and do whatever I like." I looked her deep in her eyes and told her, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you. Now get a bag, gather your clothes and get the fuck out of my house." That was 3 days ago and I haven't heard from her. I'm sorry about how long this is and if there are any spelling errors. I'm curious to those have been where I'm at. What can I expect from here? Thank you for reading. Update 1. Hello all. Let me first thank all who commented or messaged me. I truly appreciate the praise and advice you all given. I've tried to keep up with the comments, so if I didn't answer yours, I'm sorry. I hope I answer more of the common questions you all have asked in this update. If you haven't read the first part, go to my page. It's still there. After I posted the first part of this, you all have given me a ton of advice, so I followed most of it. This morning I planned on doing a bit of damage control of my life, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for STD, and I have that appointment in 2 days. Next, I started contacting all the people close to me, my father and a few friends. They all have been really supportive, offering their own advice and asking if I need help with anything, but as I got this shit on lock, I declined. I then started to contact her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad thanking them for allowing me into their family and that I was grateful for all that they had done for me. But Em and I are getting divorced and that I would miss them terribly. Not really, they were very suffocating, and while they are great people, I'm happy I no longer have to deal with it. I then told them if they had any questions, feel free to ask. I didn't hear back from them for a while, so I moved on to Em's sister. This kind of hurt because her sister and I were good friends and I knew this would mess up that friendship. I texted her, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to text you this, but Em and I are going to get a divorce and I wanted you to know. I want to thank you. From day one you accepted me as a brother. I will be around if you ever need anything from me." Around the time I sent the text, her parents responded back. I'll type up how the conversation went. "Parents, we are so sorry to hear this. What happened? Why hasn't Em said anything to us? Me. Em has been in at least a year-long affair. I suspect it started before our wedding. I'm unsure why she hasn't reached out, but I think you should call her. She left the house. I figured she would have gone to you." Parents, "No, we haven't heard from her. We'll call her. Thanks for letting us know. Are you sure she was having an affair?" "Wait, I am positive. I found their texts." Parents, "We're so sorry that she did that. We'll try and get in touch with her." After dealing with her family, I moved on to Jay's fiancé. I can't remember if I told you all that he is engaged in the first part. I know it was brought up in some of the comments. I thought this was going to be difficult, that Em and Jay would have conspired some master plan. But either Em didn't tell him I found out or they're just idiots. I sent her a text around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for a coffee or something. By 2:05 she agreed and told me to meet her at some gross hipster coffee shop across from her work at 2:30. I arrived first, ordered my horrible coffee and waited for a few minutes. She walked in, ordered hers, and came and joined me. I told her, there's no easy way to say what I'm about to tell you, so I'm just going to blurt it out. Jay has been cheating on you with my wife. It's been going on for more than a year. She was obviously shocked, so I then told her, I only found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then. But I had a divorce to get started and my own pity to deal with. She asked how I found out. I told her everything that's in the first post. I then asked if she wanted to see the evidence I gathered and pulled out a binder. She grabbed the binder and skimmed through the messages and pictures and just started to silently cry. I told her she's more than welcome to take the binder if she wanted to confront Jay with it, or use it to see if he would lie. She thanked me, stood up, took the binder, and I told her if she needs anything from me to let me know. She nodded her head and walked out looking very defeated. I know you all told me to just stay sober, keep a level head and whatnot, but my world just came crashing down on my head. I'm going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, smoke cigars, and blare music. After this week, I'll stop feeling sorry for myself, get back to my usual schedule. On a more positive note, I've already packed up most of her things, clothes, jewelry, etc. I also threw in our wedding book and every photo that has her in it in the boxes. If and when she comes back for her stuff, I don't want her here any longer than she needs to be. Also, before you ask, no, I didn't ruin her clothes. Other than a few picture frames, nothing's broken. As of right now, there's nothing else happening. I told everyone I needed to tell. My doctor's appointment is scheduled. My lawyer's hard at work to get me out of this nonsense, and 90% of her things are in boxes. I really don't know what's left if she stays out of my hair. This might be the smoothest divorce ever. Thank you for reading. Advice is always appreciated. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm sorry I've been missing in action for a while and didn't respond to comments and messages. But I think I've caught up, and now for the update. So, since the update, I've been enjoying my pity party drinking and more drinking. I'd say this is my first semi-sober moment since I found out about everything and can't really put into words how I feel. I guess numb is an accurate word. In the last update I told you all I notified everyone, and the only one that didn't respond was M's sister, who I was very close to. Well, that night I wrote the update. I had continued my drinking binge after I posted and passed out on my back patio with a bottle and a few beer cans surrounding me and woke up to the smell of breakfast being cooked. My first though was, oh Christ, M came back and thinks that breakfast was going to make up for what she's done. I worked myself up to a rage and threw myself out of the chair ready for a screaming match, but to my surprise, it was M's sister. Call her W. I stood there for a moment trying to calm myself back down, but when W seen I was awake, she sprinted to me and wrapped her arms around me. She didn't say anything to me. She just took my hand and led me to the table and put a plate in front of me as I ate. She told me how sorry she was and that when her sister showed up to her house and just said that we were having problems and it would be fine in a few days. Then told me that when I texted her that we were divorcing, she asked them if it would be fine. Why is he divorcing you? Apparently M just broke down and told them everything. I scoffed and said there's no way she told you everything, and proceeded to tell her all that happened. W told me that M had said it was a one-time thing and that I was blowing it out of proportion. I told W that I have no intention of getting back together with M, and if that is why she's here, she's wasting her time, and if she's in contact with M, W needs to tell her to find a lawyer. She laughed and said she wasn't here for her sister, she was here for me. She told me that of course she'd be there for my sister, but that her and I are friends, and she wouldn't abandon me, especially when I didn't do anything wrong. I stood up and went to her side of the table and just hugged her. I was so worried that all this bullshit that's going on would ruin her and my friendship, and hearing her say that made me feel so much better. W stayed with me for 2 days. Guest bedroom, you heathens. And left this morning as I am preparing to leave for my cabin. I had it before the marriage, so M can't touch it. I was gathering my hunting and fishing equipment. She asked if she could join me, but I told her as much as I would like that she should probably go check in on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and left. I am truly grateful to W for being there for me, and before any of you say she's into me, she's not. She's also 20 and that's way too young for me. It's just a really great friendship. I almost forgot to say I went to the doctors, got tested, and the results should be in on Monday. I've reached out to Jay's fiance a few times just to check on her. She tells me she's fine and she doesn't know what to do. I told her if she wants to meet anytime next week so she could vent, I'm more than happy to listen. I'll be on here for a little bit, so if you have questions or advice, feel free to comment or message me.